right. All right, I think we would like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. President Sandoval will be in just shortly, but we wanted to go ahead and get started for those of you that are here, and we thank you for being here. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Let's start with a moment of silence, and we have a guest who will do our Pledge of Allegiance. I'm sorry, what is his name? Ethan Berg. All right. Please stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So we're going to go ahead and just go right into our business this evening. I thank the staff for making sure that we're doing our social isolation. I appreciate those that have come and understand that you have to be in the training rooms. At this moment, are we doing public comment? We would like to invite, do we have public comment at all? Or?
What we were doing with public comment is, and at this point we don't have much public right here, so if there is comment needed on any of these items, we'll address the comment for 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank
right.
you for being here, Governing Board. These are the most trying of trying days. This is not how I expected to end my spring break or my career, but we've been through worse situations, actually. So I expect that we're going to be, 3 weeks ago, we started a task force called Not on My Watch 2. So we were able to put together, and Mr. Duguid has been amazing at getting the teams together to be able to say, all right, how are we going to be anticipating, addressing, and reacting, proacting to what we need to do with respect to any issues that are going to be happening. As we started to look at it, it determined that we were really going through our strategic areas, okay? We're looking at safety and well-being of our students. That's obviously number one. We're looking at stewardship and how we're maintaining the things with our community. We're looking at how we're tying into our community and keeping them informed and trying to react to their comments. But certainly our job is to educate our children. So we have the 4 strategic areas. I don't know if anything would not fit exactly in those areas. So what we're planning on doing is having Sean first come up, I believe, and, is that correct? And addressing the first area and looking at this thing called student safety, what we're doing in that area, and what we're anticipating doing. Now, remember, this is what we're doing, and I keep on saying that, and Dr. Reynolds keeps on saying to me, this is what we're planning, because this thing moves every single day. We did not expect to be closing, but now we are. And so we don't know how long that's going to be, so we are looking at 2 weeks, but we don't know if it's going to be 2 months. So we need to be fluid. We need to be able to make decisions based on the best information that we have. So that's what I wanted to share. And so, Sean, can you take it away with respect to what you've been working on?
Be happy to. Good afternoon, President Sandoval, members of the Governing Board, and Mrs. Pals Thompson. I am blessed to work with some of the most amazing leaders on a daily basis, and that has never been more evident than in the last 2 weeks. With us here tonight, I have Mrs. Sandra Shawsow, Director of Food and Nutrition, Mr. Phil Camacho, Director of Transportation, and Mr. Chris Deeg, Executive Director of Facilities, who will each speak with you about our plans in their respective departments. I'd also like to publicly thank Ms. Lisa Alexander, who's in the audience, who is our lead nurse, who has been in constant contact with the Department of Health Services for the last few weeks. I'd like to begin with social and emotional learning, as this is also part of my department, and there is nothing greater than the need of our students to have excellent social and emotional learning. During the closure, our staff will be continuing or continually, contacting each of our families, inquiring on, checking in, just seeing how they're doing, if they have any needs at all. And lastly, we plan on establishing a hotline that will be monitored by our team starting in the very near future. That team will consist of Mrs. Leonard, Dr. Walters, and our social work interns. Do you have any questions with regard to social and emotional learning that I can answer for you at this time? Okay. I'd like to first ask Ms. Sandra Stoss out to the mic to give us a report on food and nutrition.
Thank you, Sean. Members of the board, obviously our first goal is making sure that, in our department, is making sure that our kids are fed, that there is food available. If you've gone grocery shopping, you've seen the empty shelves. There's plenty of food in the food service department. We have 28 sites that are going to be open from 10:30 to noon, Monday through Friday. The students, it'll be a drive-through setup, and lunch will be handed to them along with breakfast for the following day. So there'll be plenty of food for them, a complete meal, fruit, vegetable, milk, entree, same thing at breakfast time. So there'll be everything that they need. It is free to all students. We were able to get, as long as AD approves, the goal is Apache and Desert Harbor are furthest north schools that we are able to go ahead and feed at, along with all of our southern schools and everything in between. We have 3 high schools that we'll be serving at, Centennial, Ironwood, and Kellis. And so the food will be available. The communication is going to go out, letting all the students know that even if you're at a Coyote Hills or a Vistancia, if you need access to food, come on in. Doesn't matter how much you make, who you are, where you're from. It's open for all students 18 and under, and it is free. And I stand for any questions.
Ms. Underhill?
Uh-huh.
I do have a question. You mentioned free for all students. What's the process in which you're identifying if they're a PUSD student or not?
It does not matter if they're a Peoria student.
Okay.
There is I'm going to look up what the number is. You can text food to 877-877. That is the normal summer setup, and you can go to any site that's open. You don't have to be a Peoria student to come to ours. If you're a Peoria student, you can go to another district. It doesn't really matter where you're enrolled.
Thank you for that clarification.
Ms. Pingrelli?
I just had one question. You said that it's 10:30 to 12, and you're having, is it then lunch, dinner, I guess, and then breakfast the next day? How many meals is it then that they're picking up?
You'll receive lunch for that day, and we are going to offer some hot food and some cold food.
Okay.
You can choose whichever, and then you'll also receive a breakfast that you can take home with you.
Okay.
The design is that students will pick up meals and take it home.
Okay.
We do, if you're a parent that has 4 kids, for example, you need to bring all 4 because we do have to still work within ADA regulations and USDA regulations. So you can't pull up and say, I have 4 kids at home. I can't give you the meals. You have to have the kids with you.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Stone?
I don't have anything now. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much. It sounds like we've quickly put together a plan, and we're so appreciative for you guys, as always. Just one question. Are we working in collaboration with local food banks and pantries to ensure that, folks have food on the weekends as well?
I know that there is a group that Danielle had mentioned that is going to work with snacks at the high school groups. And I know that the food pantries are also putting out information. They will probably be listed on that same number. It's an ADE number. A lot of the schools are functioning like the summer programs. And so if you go on there, it lists all the sites open, and food banks, I'm sure, will be on that list.
Great. Thank you very much.
Ms. Underhill? I do have a request, Superintendent Pallas-Thompson. As we go through this first week, can we keep track of the data and send a report as we go through this is what we're looking at numbers-wise to see if we see any trends and any kind of data that will help make future decisions if it ends up extending.
Yeah,
Yes,
those numbers are
thank
easy.
you. You can address that. We discussed that this morning.
Right. We want to know, are the kids getting the information or that they know that the free food is out there? Are they coming and getting the food? We can change at any point and add more sites. there might be an apartment complex or a trailer park that maybe needs more access to it because the parents maybe aren't available because they're at work, or the kids can't walk because of major cross streets, we can add those to it as well. We're going to start with all the sites so that it's quick and easy information to get out and easy for our staff, but then we can also start adding other sites as needed, especially if the closure continues for a long time. We'll definitely add some more sites to it.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Good afternoon, Governing Board. In transportation, what we're currently doing is we're going through DPS inspections for next year so that we can receive our tags so that we can transport students next year. So we're currently doing that. And in that process, once they go through their inspections, we are disinfecting all our buses to make sure that when our students return or when we resume school, that our buses are ready to be used. We are also working with Food and Nutrition to pass out information in our neighborhoods where our routes run so that the community knows where to go and pick up food. So we'll be handling it next week, and we'll be sending out our staff to distribute those flyers within the neighborhood so that we can get that communicated to everybody. Any questions?
Ms. Sayre?
In regards to safety, how large is your employee group?
Approximately 250 employees.
And is there a plan to, as recommended, to keep the sizes down? Do you have like a shift A, B? Are they in constant contact? How are we keeping our staff safe?
Correct. Currently, I met with my supervisors this afternoon, and we are going to reconvene on Wednesday after the board meeting today to come up with a plan to make sure that we do not convene all 250 employees at one time. We'll have to come up with a plan to bring them in shifts so that we don't have that 50-plus ratio.
Ms. Pingrelli? Okay. Ms. Stone?
I'm satisfied, thank you.
Thank
Me
you.
too. Thank you very much.
Hello, members of the board. Myself and my team plan on supporting the district strategic plan and working through this project or this process by we've got ABM coming in. They're going to continue working. They're going to continue disinfecting all sites this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and will continue immediately following next week with deep cleaning of all school sites, up to and not including hard surface flooring. And for the facilities department, we plan on continuing operations as normal. We don't convene in groups larger, very rarely, larger than 25 to 50. We plan on, we've got a little over 300 work orders currently that are not including open extended projects that include front office renovations for our safety and well-being of students that will be completed this summer. As for facilities, it's going to kind of be business as usual unless otherwise directed. I'm open to questions.
Ms. Stone, did you have any questions?
Is this building on the list for the deep cleaning and all that too?
You got it. Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Pingrelli?
None at this time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Underhill, members of the board, Mrs. Pallas Thompson. So during this time, we are told to keep our distance, but connection is not only central as one of the areas in our strategic plan, it is also quite critical of an aspect for us to get through the crisis that we are presented with as a community and as a nation. So as it relates to community connection, I'll highlight a few of the key areas from our emergency response. We are obviously keeping you and our community up to date with a number of the communications as things happen across our district. To highlight a few of them, we're really aiming to be as fast but factual as we can in our communication. This is a challenge given how quickly our situation is changing. So we're trying to post frequent updates for our community. You can see all of that on our website, peoriaunified.org/coronavirus. There you'll find an archive of all of our communication, as well as the meal information that you heard Mrs. Shasau talk about. Soon you'll see a lot more built-out components, such as an FAQ that addresses a number of the concerns that we are hearing from our staff, as well as our community. Right now, we are monitoring all of the information that's coming to us. We are trying to get to some critical decisions as a leadership team, and then we'll be updating those FAQs and all the other sources of information that you see on there. A very key and critical component you also heard Mr. Duguid talk about, and that is with respect to the social emotional well-being of our students and our community, really. So we do have a couple of resources currently posted on that website that address social emotional well-being, dealing with anxiety during such a critical time, and more importantly, how to talk to kids about what they are taking in and making sense of in the world around them right now. Some other channels that we're utilizing, social media, that's been a pretty critical barometer for us as to what our public is going through. So we are monitoring that continuously and doing our best to keep up on the responses on that channel and either redirect to our FAQ or take some of those questions to let them know that's unknown right now, but we're hoping to have more information on that soon. Through our work, we are also coordinating with our municipalities. I spent this afternoon over at the city of Peoria to make sure they understood our response plan and how we would be supporting each other as separate entities during this time. We also work very closely with the city of Peoria in particular relative to the camps that are running on our campuses right now to serve as kind of a support for families that may be working. We do this every year during spring break, during winter break, and of course during the summer break. We're monitoring our numbers there and actually keeping a close eye on the numbers in those programs really on a day-to-day basis. So the city does run 3 sites in 3 of our schools, and then we run our own programming through our Kids Zone program that is to serve our City of Glendale families. So we currently do have students on 2 of those sites. They are in small groups. Of course, we are encouraging all of the proper procedures for our staff to stay home if they're not feeling well. And again, that program is operating on a day-to-day basis through this week. As it relates to other partnerships beyond the city, that is something that we're currently keeping a running archive of right now. We are so appreciative to such a supportive community that has already offered to lend a helping hand in so many areas. A number of them we are putting on standby because some of what we're sifting through right now, we just don't know what we don't know as it relates to what we may need. So I know we mentioned food banks. The Heart Pantry has come forward already, and we're working with them, or we'll be working with them on a snack program that may help to sustain some of our families through the weekend, depending on how long these closures are in place. And a number of our other partners have come forward and also offered their support related to a number of different things. Childcare is something that we have heard from our community, and so we'll continue to look for other resources we may see in our community that could provide a support to our parents. So we'll post those on our website as well as soon as we have that information available. Something else that we just received this afternoon, and we'll be sure to get out to you all as it relates to how you conduct your business. The AG's office did recently release information related to open meeting law and information for public bodies as it relates to how you'll communicate going forward or how you could continue to hold some public meetings. We haven't had a chance to fully digest all of that just yet. My sense of the general gist of the information they've provided is not going to be much of a surprise for you, some emergency clauses for how you might operate if you had to make decisions or come together as a public body, and how we would inform our public of that. If it had to be something electronic, how we would provide proper notice. So again, we are going through all that information, and if there are some critical updates related to that we need to bring forward to you, we'll be sure to get that out to all of you in a report once we've been able to go through that entire piece. I think the last piece I would just add before we'll move on, if you have any questions related to this area. Right now, it's very fast because we're making a lot of really critical decisions or planning for what we don't know. So we think we may be on to a key decision, but of course, much of what we're doing will really need to be flexible, and we'll have to shift depending on advice we're getting from all of our local agencies. So we're making a lot of operational, legal decisions, weighing all of those aspects, but we're trying to be really mindful, most specifically even our communications team, of our students and the fact that these closures are necessary, but it is our students that are, of course, going to be missing out on many academic, athletic, championships or performances, band concerts. So we're trying to keep in mind, depending on how long these closures last, what are some of the things that we can do to highlight the hard work that they have put in up to this point through the year, and to really make sure we're being mindful of the impact that this is having on kids. So we'll be sure to be infusing some of that into our communications in the weeks ahead once we get through some of these more tactical pieces that we're working to share. So I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Thank you very much. And I know we jumped right into business, but first and foremost, and I'll echo what Mr. Duguid had stated, is thank you to your team, to the administration team, governing board, and parents, community members, to reaching out. Honestly, this is a tough time for all of us because there's a lot of unknowns. However, I'm confident that this district is prepared. We've set forth and put a safety risk operations officer a while back and went through a lot of FEMA training and staff training, so I'm confident in that ability. And remember to take care of yourselves as well, because without your mental health and well-being, then there are challenges that we face with that too. So please remember to take care of yourselves as we get through this. Communication is key in all matters of transportation to food and how we work through that. I appreciate that you bring up the city of Peoria. I know at one point when we were thankful for their services for utilizing their broadcasting system, where are we with that space?
So, Mrs. Ceja Martinez, thank you for that question. We have an excellent relationship with the communications team that runs their Channel 11 Cox communication system. Mr. Colley, who you know well and runs many of the media productions things for us here, he has close contacts there as well. Should we need to utilize that source for anything going forward, I know they stand ready and mobilized to support us with anything that might help with our communication. We're pushing everybody to the website right now, but we know that will likely be a source that we need to pull in once we have some things we're ready to share through that channel. And so we do appreciate all their support. And thank you for mentioning that. And our team, the emergency team, really is working hard. I joked, not really, but with my team yesterday, within just a moment's notice of the governor's closure and kind of our pivot in that area, within minutes. They were mobilized, they were working hard, so they've just been phenomenal. And, I told them, given a laptop and a cell phone, this team could rule the world. So we appreciate them and the time that they're spending to get the word out to our community.
Thank you. In addition to communication, part of, I've had the opportunity to serve on Arizona's preparedness, and there was a document that I provided to all the governing board, but one of it does state about promoting essentially social distancing, educating. Is there continue to promote proper hygiene with student staff? Is there anything that we're working on in regards to that promotion? How important is social distancing is? It would all have a part in this, as our governor stated.
Mrs. Sayre Martinez, yes, and thank you for bringing that up. A lot of that will be included in our FAQs. We have also included links from the CDC and Arizona Department of Health Services, all of their extensive research and information related to hygiene that's available to our community. There's links from that on that coronavirus page that we've created. We want to make sure we are sending them through our page, but onto those other experts, and certainly we're not the expert in any of those particular areas, but yes, and I believe Governor Ducey yesterday in his address even called on school districts to be using all of their materials to remind the community about what role they can play in helping to contain the spread of this virus.
I know our principals have done across the district a great job reading books at night to our kids, and they've come, our children trust our site administrators. If they're comfortable, I would ask them if they could present or share on washing hands at home in their home attire, because it's not very often that we see them, but I believe that our students and our children would like to see them washing their hands and taking care of themselves as well.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sayre Martinez. Ms. Pingerelli? Ms. Underhill?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. And again, you guys are amazing and doing a really good job of getting that information out to the community. Just back on the whole child care piece, and I think you're doing this through the CDC, and we've been seeing it, but just I think about 40% of, grandchildren are taken care of by their grandparents. So I just want to make sure that we're, educating the community that maybe grandma and grandpa aren't going to be the best bet right now. And along those lines, I have heard from a few folks that have that are either working in preschool or have preschoolers, so they just want to make sure that they're aware if and when we're able to open up, that they can have some timelines like everybody else, but for making those plans around daycare in the community. So I know that's a big concern, but just appreciate all the work that you're doing because I know it's nonstop, so thank you.
Thank you for that. Ms. Stone?
No, I just want to thank you for the rapidity with which this has been in place, and I know it's going to take a lot of constant vigilance and work in the future, so I appreciate it, I really do.
So, Ms. Sayre, first, to everybody, I apologize for stepping in this meeting late. This may have already been discussed, from Mr. Duguid, but do we have intentions to have, a hotline in addition to the websites that individuals can call into?
President Sandoval, members of the board, yes, the intention is to set up a hotline for those who may need to call in. I should have also noted, as far as diversifying our communications, and we also do have our message posted in Spanish. Some of our other materials, we just have a little bit of a lag, but they'll be posted in Spanish as well, so I did want to put that in there as well.
Good, perfect. And then as far as internal communications, I think, it makes sense, for every individual that's seen as a trusted guide or a touch point with the community, has, I can't say as much knowledge as you and team, but certainly, the ability to at least refer individuals to your team or particular website you spoke about, but just having the same level of, I guess, conversation or a very parallel conversation at all touch points, I think is important, for, as individuals reach out to certain channels that they're more used to. If that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. But again, like everyone stated, thank you, for all the hard work, and I know I missed Mr. Duguid and your presentation. I have no doubt that as a district, I know we've been on the phone with you quite often over the last week, and what you're doing every day to be diligent and to adapt to even to adapt to the fluidity, of what's going on is amazing. So thank you for that. Ms. Aya, you had something else?
You reminded me to add one more piece of information. So we're working on consistent and frequent communication. I would like to add if there was a consistent, like a robocall every day at 4 p.m. At the end of the day or even the next morning, so that way all the whole community knows that, okay, this is the call I need to answer because this is what I should be hearing on an update. And same thing for a staff. If every day at 4 p.m. I should be looking for an email for my staff to get the consistent message, no matter the outcome, if there are any changes or what you should be looking forward in the future. So that'd be my ask.
Thank you, Mrs. Ceja Martinez. I believe the goal is to get there once we get through this week of spring break, and that we'll have kind of a little bit more of a flow down with our leadership team, and we'll probably know a little bit better what to expect in the week ahead during that extended closure. Thank you. We will be sure to do that.
Thank you.
You know, one last thing, just to piggyback on what Ms. Saya stated earlier about just providing best practices to our community. I think, well, the messaging is frequent and complete, I think based on, not seasonality, but, you know, if you take a look at certain, well, I'm going to call it seasonality. So in other words, if and when, you know, we have individuals, you know, come back to school, I think it would make sense to have communications in and around, you know, if they work, you know, traveling or in, you know, the level 3 countries, right, as determined by the CDC. I think it would make sense, you know, as we get closer to that date, you know, to send out that communication as far as another best practice, right?
President Sandoval, members of the board, yes, I think we'll be looking at a number of those things. I think, you know, kind of once we can get our arms around some of the things, pieces that we're waiting on and waiting to come together, you know, regarding our staff and what things will look like for them going forward. I think we'll also be very anxious to put together what would be our ramp-up plan once we are looking to reopen our doors once again. So we know that will be equally as important as the plan that we're cycling through right now.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Sandoval, as we're waiting for Ms. Myers to come up here, while student learning is our most important component, the stewardship component, the finances, those kinds of discussions are critical for the board to make certain decisions and resolutions on in order for us to move forward on the other aspects. So that's why we're bringing that one first, or third.
Thank you.
Well,
Ms. Myers?
Thank you very much, President Sandoval, members of the governing board, Mrs. Pallas Thompson, our community. I'm here tonight to share an update from the Stewardship of Community Resources perspective with our strategic plan, and you do have in front of you this evening a resolution for consideration and approval from our governing board. And in that resolution, it talks about our requirement to comply with the statewide closure of public schools. What's unique for Peoria Unified this week is that we're on spring break, so we're actually technically already closed. So you'll note that within this resolution, there's a return date of next Monday, March 23rd, which is then the first day of the closure for Peoria Unified, because technically we're already closed this week due to spring break. Now with that, within the resolution, there are opportunities related to compensating our staff. And if I may direct your attention to paragraph 5 in particular, we do have guidance from our legal counsel that we can approve a resolution that it is in the best interest of the district for continuity of governance and community interest to compensate our employees during this closure. And what that would mean in particular is some employees would, all employees would be expected to return on Monday the 23rd, but then depending on the day-by-day updates and the fluid nature of this national crisis, if there were changes, employees may be asked to report home and to be on call from home or work from home or be deployed to other district locations to have assignments based on the needs of the district and the community at that point in time. And that structure in this resolution would allow us to compensate our employees, to offer consideration to have them on call and forbearance that they would not leave our employment at this point in time, where we would then have a reduction in workforce. And so this resolution does take us through March 27th, which is the date and the timeline from the state of Arizona. I can share that at a state level there is conversation right now for direction to school districts on this matter if this closure time period extends, and there is conversation out there that it very well may, but this resolution allows us to compensate our employees and to continue business operations March 23rd through the 27th, and then as well, if there are needed changes after that, there is delegated authority in the latter part of the resolution to both our superintendent and our deputy superintendent to comply with additional state mandates. I stand for questions at this point in time regarding the resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Stone?
So the way I read it, if it's necessary to extend the closure, we won't have to come in for a meeting for that by delegating the authority?
That is correct, Mrs. Doan.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had it straight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Underhill?
So I guess my question is, I understand like within transportation and facilities and that kind of thing, that there's social distancing and all that built in. I just wondered, at the school sites, how will that work? I mean, if the school sites are closed, what will, like, you know, our teachers and our certified or classified staff be
Thank you, Ms.
responsible for?
Thank you, Mr. Sandoval and Mrs. Underhill, members of the board. I would expect next week we'll have additional direction on what that would look like. Of course, students are not permitted to report to school. Staff will return on Monday, and then there will be further direction on how staff will work, if there will be cycling of key emergency personnel. Some personnel may be required in limited numbers to report to their regular location. Others may be deployed. Of course, we will have to follow all of the guidance at a state level from a safety perspective. That'll be important. And I also should mention that if an individual is not available to be deployed or to be on call, they will be permitted to take vacation or discretionary time, and that is also in the resolution.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill. Ms. Pingarelli?
Oh, thank you. That was one thing I was going to point out. And then on section 4, which is superintendent or deputy superintendent is authorized to extend the dates of the school closure if necessary. I'm not comfortable in giving up the power of the governing board. I would like the governing board to keep power to come back for another meeting, take recommendation, and to vote on it at that point after the 27th.
I have a couple questions. One, I was trying to look for the policy about discretionary time. I'm quite familiar with the 40 hours. Here's an opportunity where we really communicate to the Peoria Unified that we put people first. So can you help me understand that if the expectation is to come to work and somebody doesn't feel well, we're going to obviously communicate to them they need to stay home. What does that look like if they're out of the 40 hours and they're out of discretionary time?
President Sandoval, Mrs. Ceja Martinez, that is a very good question, and we do have policy that delineates discretionary and vacation days, but I also should note that at the federal level, there's legislation right now that's with the Senate looking at opportunities for employers to provide additional days, and Prop 206 actually has a requirement for up to 30 hours of discretionary time. So we're following these changing laws daily. And so if there is a need to update policy related to our current vacation or discretionary time, we can certainly bring that back. We are looking to the state of Arizona to provide guidance. I'm aware that there are conversations and meetings taking place, and I suspect there will be something forthcoming in the near future.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you following up with that. I want to make sure that our staff knows that they have our full support and that we educate them on their options as well. In addition to that, I would like us to consider a care for the family in their immediate family or some kind of policy if one of their family members is identified with COVID-19. Do we have the ability to give them family care separate from FMLA, but family care time, some days that we could pay them so they can take care of their family?
President Sandoval, Mrs. Ceja Martinez, members of the board, we will align to federal and state guidance in that area. We know that's being discussed as people are being required to quarantine if a member of their family is identified as having COVID-19.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that. Some other stewardship of resources. I appreciate you bringing this forward. And I know some of our fellow districts, peer districts, chose to close their schools prior to the governor announcing his statement and press release. I would like some very clear guidelines provided to our community as well as our staff what the roles and expectations are. Because if we make a decision as a governing board to extend closures outside the purview of the state law, there are potential monetary implications, lack of funding, things like that. So where I would stand is to follow what the governor states and what state policy says, and that we don't go out of that purview. And if the community wants us or needs us to extend that time, that they know the proper channels who to communicate to, and that's the governor who has the authority. The resolution does give the authority to the superintendent and deputy superintendent if something were to happen to the superintendent. Help me understand when would be a situation where you would overstep the governor's decision.
That's a good question. I would say an example would be if we had a case of the virus in, with our staff at a school, or in some of that, then the governor might say, well, we're opening all schools, and we're saying, well, we cannot open ours for this reason. So that's one that I can think of right now. Or if during this thing that there's an unforeseen issue that occurs, or we don't pass whatever the DPS kind of monitoring that would be there to say, you haven't cleaned correctly. So those would be types of things. It wouldn't be a frivolous decision. And as you point out, it is a decision that we have by policy. This is not Section 4, as you looked at, is not something that's new. We're able to extend that currently. The board would be notified if that's the decision we made. And as you know, we're keeping in pretty close contact all the time. So I would feel comfortable that we're doing it. It's a superintendent, but based on health issues and situations of age that certain people in our organization have, I want to make sure that the real issue is that our deputy has the same authority as the superintendent to make that happen, so that we're not scrambling and figuring out, well, what are we doing here? But those would be some examples. I'm hoping none of those would come true.
Okay. So in regards to the resolution, if the clear message from the board to the administration is to align to state statute and federal guidelines, then I'm comfortable with the resolution that is the direction that the board is giving, so that we are not putting ourselves in a position where we later lose funding for unintentional consequences. In regards to stewardship of resources, and please stop me if we're going to talk about this in a later touch point. Recently, we've made some very big decisions on finances within our district with a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of certified financial planners and advice that says, even in the general home, be mindful of big purchases. What is the direction of the finances of our district now and going forward as we look to finish off the year and planning for next year? As a high overview, I know, without going into the weeds.
President Sandoval, Mrs. Ceja Martinez, members of the governing board, we are monitoring on a daily basis the legislative process and impacts on projections, if we have a recession in the country, in the state, and things of that nature. But what we do know is we're far enough along in the school year, and we're past the 100th day, that our funding for this current year is set. Now, as far as funding for the future years, I mean, that's still being determined, but decisions that we've made to date are based on our current state through June 30th, and with that, we feel comfortable with the recommendations that we've made to date as well.
When would we know, or is a good time to reevaluate if we should make more big expenditures going forward. If we are set till June and we need to plan, one of our primary goals as a board is a 1, 3, 5-year plan, when is a good time should we be looking for that conversation?
I would expect our superintendent and deputy superintendent to schedule be it either a study session or a future board agenda item. At this point in time, this is a very fluid scenario, and so we've not made any modifications to our process outside of knowing that next week, if we've had meetings scheduled, those will be canceled, and then we'll look to the following week for direction from the state on next steps.
And just for the record, Superintendent, I would take a very conservative approach with the very few dollars that we have in an unknown situation and a future unknown election with the big purchases that are on the docket. And if the board needs to rescind any votes, that should be discussed and presented to the board. That's all I have.
Got it. As far as Michelle, Ms. Myers is highly conservative, okay, as we all know. And I definitely trust her judgment. We're in a time warp right now. And so I know there was discussion with our teachers associations and our teachers, if we don't get this material that we badly need, and we made the decision on that, so it's
Right.
really, it's a moot point at this point, because it was, voted on. The ability to say, can we put this into salaries? Okay, not. Let's put it into coronavirus. Not. If we had the materials today, if we had bought them like we should have last year, we would have no problem serving our entire district, special ed and not, with the materials that we purchase. So we need to be able to go on after this crisis and continue in the way that we're wanting to. So it's going to be a 1.5, 3.5, and 5.5 year plan, because we're cutting out a half year now.
I don't disagree, and I just want us to know that if we need to change directions for whatever reason, we should continue to have those discussions and not to shy away from them.
Yeah.
So that's it. So.
Thank you, Ms. Anna Martinez. Yeah, and I would agree with that last statement. There's no doubt. I mean, we're going through our budget committee is doing a lot of work, around what the next 1 to 3 years looks like. Obviously, this is something that we didn't plan for, but we are doing our due diligence to make sure that we're always putting the district, our students, teachers, and staff in a position to be successful. To Ms. Pingarelli's point around Section 4, for me, I'm okay with the way it reads, and as long as, I know this would be tough because it is such a fluid, situation that we're in, but, if we have no later than Wednesday, preferably Tuesday, but no later than Wednesday, an understanding of whether or not we may extend, school closures, right? And with that said, are we already thinking about, and I'm sure we are, if we do have to extend our school closures, are we talking about, I guess, staffing models, right, over those weeks? If it's not 100% of our staff, I mean, if it's, a skeleton crew, for lack of a better term, or those most critical positions that we may need to, continue to bring in and fund, et cetera, are we going over kind of different models to allow us to go beyond, what the state has authorized, right? And I don't disagree, Ms. Pallas-Thompson. I mean, we do have to consider, localization, if you will, right? I mean, because if on the 26th, we do hear that we within our district have a confirmed case, we have to make that decision to, again, put our entire 37,000 plus and 4,000 plus employees in a safe and healthy, environment. So, but that said, I want to make sure that we're just really planning, for those situations where we may have to extend, our closure as a district beyond, what the state is authorizing today. That said, any other comments, questions? Ms. Underhill?
I just had one question on Section 3 on the bottom about the discretionary and vacation time to be paid. I did have one classified person reach out to me and ask if there was a vacation bank. They were willing to donate hours. So I didn't know if we had anything like that, but I just wanted to find out if there was something available.
President Sandoval, Mrs. Underhill, members of the board, we do have a sick leave bank, and I can certainly ask Dr. Davidson to send a communication out to the board summarizing how that particular bank works.
I do have one more question from a finance regard. So knowing that the state is continuing to provide resources through the 27th, what are we doing with our, I guess, private placement education partners that we do send some of our students to, for instance, our students with special needs, et cetera. If we are still receiving those dollars, I'm going to assume that those will still flow through like they normally would to those organizations as well.
I'm going to defer to our superintendent to speak to the work that's occurring on our student success side and our special exceptional students. If I may defer to Mrs. Pallas Thompson with that question, please.
Sure, thank you.
Mr. Sandoval, those sites right now are like our ACES program we're talking about, our hearing impaired program, those are closed right now.
Great.
So the state has closed them down. So until we get more information on them, we can't provide it. I've talked to Ms. Harper today. As we're looking at the last parts, the student learning component right now, there's some plans, but there's also some concerns that if we can't provide the programs to our special ed students, then we shouldn't provide it to any of our students. So that's something that we have to take a look at and try to find other unique ways of moving around with our special ed children.
Right.
So,
yeah. No, and thank you for that. And I guess, in addition to that, where I'm headed is no different than the state understanding the I guess, adverse financial situation, that our staff and employees would be in if we weren't able to pay them or didn't pay them, over this time frame. A lot of our associates would be, in a tough spot. So, those resources are still, flowing to the district, enabling us to do that, yes?
That's correct. There's
Through the
not
27th.
been any interruption in funding.
Perfect. So then I would think no different than, and some of these private placement partners that we have who would be in a similar situation, who also have employees and associates that, aren't, able to be on campus, due to the current situation that we're in. Those monies should, flow just like it's flowing to us from the state down to, those partners as it normally would, is where I'm headed.
And President Sandoval, members of the board, we would have to have the contractual outcomes to pay those third parties. And so we know in the school finance community that grant reporting deadlines might need to be adjusted if closures extend and those other vendor programs. And so we'll receive more guidance from the state, but we don't have the discretion to continue paying those vendors unless they're providing the services to the students. And if we're closed, they're not able to do that. But it's very fluid, and we're monitoring this on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and if I may also add a clarification, we had a question as a follow-up to Mrs. Sashow's presentation, and just for clarification purposes, that the food service for the community will start on Monday, the 23rd. So our normal spring break week that we're entering, today being Monday, that will be business as usual. What she is describing for those next steps begins on March 23rd.
Gotcha.
And I'll look to Mr. Duguid if I missed anything with that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comment?
I have something. Ms. Myers, this is not really on the top of our list, but I'm kind of burning up with curiosity. So especially if this is extended, and we're looking at our seniors, perhaps graduate, you know, and all the contractual obligations we have with the stadium and everything like that. I'm quite sure nobody has talked about that yet, really, but is there probably room to reschedule things like that?
Thank you, Mrs. Doan. President Sandoval, I will defer to Danielle Airy to comment on graduation questions.
I think by Danielle Airy, we maybe met Dr. Reynolds.
Yes.
We'll find
Dr. Reynolds, sir.
Okay.
Good evening, President Sandoval, Governing Board, Mrs. Palace Thompson. Yes, we have actually had started those kinds of conversations. As you can imagine, we have all kinds of events scheduled for the spring, and so graduation is one of those. And as we continue to look at our situation and look at what we might and what we might not be able to provide as far as events, graduation is one of those things. So we will be, in the next few weeks, as we know more, working with our third-party partners as it comes to events. We're talking about proms, we're talking about graduation, right? There's all kinds of things that we're working on, as well as high school athletics. So we'll be working through all of that over the upcoming weeks.
And our current plan right now is to more or less extend the school year if necessary?
No, we have not received any guidance yet. I think, including the state, we're all working on a pretty tight timeline, and we're addressing issues as they come up.
Because all of my young friends are asking me, are we going to have to go to school this summer? You know, so.
My children are asking the exact same question. So yes, so we'll be working through that, and obviously we'll be communicating with our governing board. We'll be making decisions through the governing board, through cabinet, through all of our stakeholders, as well as communicating out all the information as we get it and we know it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
President Sandoval,
Yes.
may I add to that, are you going to do Superintendent Palace Thompson, a whole section on academic students? Okay, then I'll wait. I'll hold it.
Thank you, thank
Okay.
you.
Ms. Myers, thank you very much.
Thank you.
While I'm waiting for Marla to come up again, please note that if you are looking at prom and we're not sure, I wouldn't cut the tags off the dress right now. And I would make sure that you have tickets if people are coming in from other places, that they're refundable. I don't feel hopeful that either of those events will go on as we typically do them.
All right, President Sandoval, members of the Governing Board, Mrs. Palace Thompson. In the area of student success, our team is looking at the opportunity to provide additional professional development to our teachers, most around student online platforms, so they know how to navigate those and know how to push assignments out to students. We want students to continue to learn and grow, and for us to continue to educate them. One of the other things we are doing is in our K-8 classrooms, district-wide, we have the iReady reading program already. We received word today from Curriculum and Associates, and they are going to provide us the mathematics portion of that at no additional cost. So those are two areas in the area of student success and with math and reading for sure at our elementary levels. First of all, too, at our high schools, most of our students are currently using Edgenuity, mostly surrounding credit recovery, but we do have the capabilities of pushing out a myriad of courses online in that setting as well. We're also looking at ways that students can access curriculum online. And for those students who may not have internet access or computer access at home, we are looking, our team was here today, looking at ways to provide hard copies so that school sites would be able to run those and provide our students with learning opportunities. For those students who receive special ed services, again, we're looking to the state for further guidance on how that will work. Our public relations has done an outstanding job, and they're Also posting information to parents on ways in which they can assist their child in continuing to learn at home. Our team will be posting as well some resources that are free. So as students are waiting for us to get all of our technical glitches solved and ready to go, there's access for kids both at the high school and at the elementary for them to be able, to be able to utilize free resources and continue learning at home. And like I said, there will be a tips for parents sheet that will be posted that will allow for parents to look at everything that they do as a learning opportunity, whether it be cooking and measuring or reading every day, or even having the opportunity to, do some work on the computer and be able to see different digital tools. At this time, I'll stand for questions.
Perfect, thank you. Ms. Sarah Martinez?
Thank you very much. I've seen that guide already on Facebook, so thank you. A lot of parents are already going to that. I would first like to pause that it is still spring break, and our children have worked very hard, and so has our staff. So normalcy during this first week of spring break or first few days is crucial. I am blessed to have a situation where I'm working from home, and I try to get my son to do math, and it was very difficult. So when I think about that process, when we get ready to head into a school at home system, I would really like to have an implemented structure, school structure, either to parents, to the staff, also for their boundaries for work-life balance, that you should not be working at 6 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock at night. Schedule a lunch. Here's best practice, so that our students have, okay, I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm going to have some routine, here's set schedule. I would really like to see that. In addition, we have Microsoft Office 360, and I tested out today with Teams. Teams is a great resource and can be recorded. And I know that if my sons could get on or knew that they had to log on at 8 o'clock in the morning to talk to their teacher live and their classmates, they would be engaged. And I would really like to see we use all the tools and resources that we pay for to the top of its ability. Same way board docs. But with that being said, we have Teams already, and if our students can access that, we leverage that first. I have seen other districts highlight schools that have free access to internet. Where is the conversation around that space and our partners with getting free access? I heard Spectrum in one local school district. Cox has an option. Have we had any buzz about that?
Thank you, Ms. Sarah Martinez, members of the board. We are having some conversations and looking at the various opportunities. I don't want to zero in on one of them right at the moment, but there are some opportunities for people to get access to internet services through those providers you mentioned, as well as the normal means, which is the public library, Boys and Girls Club, other places like that have facilities as well. We're also looking into the possibility of being able to issue laptops to a limited number of students whose families may not have that kind of device at home. And we're just talking about various logistical ways to handle that type of thing. So the conversation is going on.
Thank you very much. And when that update does come, a great update will come through in a Friday report. Which then transitioned to those that don't have it, was the paper pencil method. That was brought to my attention. I bring this as a huge concern because I was at Country Meadows. When I left in 2006, it was the same Ricoh printer. And I can't tell you how many districts or how many printers across the district that says does not work or jammed. And we have a serious problem with printing materials for our students with the machinery that we have. Help me understand how that's going to create a smooth process for our staff when they create these work paper packets, and then what's the financial cost to our district if we need to fix that, if that makes sense?
Thank you, Ms. Sarah Martinez. Well, we certainly stay on top of our copier situation the best we can, but I want to point out that we do have a copy center, and we encourage our staff to send their copy requests to the copy center. Now, we're going to have to figure out how to man that if we're shut down for an extended period of time. But that center has the ability to produce massive volumes of paper printed output and turn it around in pretty short order. And so we encourage people to do that. But we do have multiple high-speed machines at every single school, and those machines are usable. When we get a report of one that's got a problem, we certainly will jump on it right away.
Thank you. And the last thing I'll echo, and something my governing board member, Ms. Stone, mentioned, is to trust our teachers. They know our students best. And if they feel that paper pencil is not the best fit, but the content and standards are being met, I would say let them work with our children and our parents because they know them best, and give them the fluidity during these very difficult times. Like you're asking all of us to give you the fluidity and the autonomy to make those decisions. We would give the same respect to our teachers.
Absolutely, Mrs. Sayar Martinez. And to go back to one thing that you mentioned a few minutes ago, one of the documents that our team put together was how to handle school from home and the amount of time we should be asking our students to stay on a task. So when it mentions to get up, take a walk, maybe go down to the park for a little while, come back, and then re-engage. So we have considered that, and I couldn't agree more.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Ms. Pingerelli?
No, thank you very much. No, I agree with Mrs. Sayar Martinez about maintaining a schedule. I think that's really important because when we come back, it will allow the students to get back in at a smoother rate. Hopefully it'll be sooner than later. I just want to ask you, I think I know the answer to this. Do you think that we can deliver the material the same quality and quantity that we will be during school?
Mrs. Pingerelli, I would love to tell you yes. I think it's something it's new for everybody.
I know.
And so we're going to do the very best that we can, put as many supports in place, not only for our students, but for our teachers, to ensure that they feel confident and comfortable to deliver the instruction or the resources to our students. We're going to try to keep it as normal as we absolutely possibly can, because you're absolutely right. Routines are important. They're important for us as adults. So we would want to continue those as much as possible for our students as well.
Thank you. I think this is a new territory for all of us, for the students, for the teachers, for the governing board. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, but I know we'll get through it. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pingerelli. Ms. O'Neill?
Yes, and I know that, I don't know if you're going to have answers to these questions, and that's okay, but I just wanted to kind of share with you some things I've been hearing. So there's concern around seniors and seniors that are taking required courses. Are we putting kind of a priority on identifying options for those kids to make sure they can get that coursework done?
Mrs. Underhill, yes, we are. In fact, this afternoon, as our team came, one of the particular courses is the econ course that all of our seniors are required to have before they graduate. So we did look at pulling some materials together. We're very fortunate. One of our content team is fresh out of the classroom after teaching econ for a long, long time. So she has all of her resources that we could do it both paper, as well as Edgenuity also has a course that is covers the same standards. So we're looking at all of those courses. We are focusing on our seniors because we want to make sure that we provide everything we can to ensure that they can go on to college and not have any hiccups on our end.
That's great, thank you. And then the next question, and again, I don't know how you're going to have answers for these questions, but is there any way to have some sort of an expectation around, will we be able to communicate with the kids prior, to our, whatever, if it's this closure or prior to when they should have been starting school, about a schedule, or are we expecting by sometime this week that our students will receive communication either from their administrators or their teachers about what they should be doing next week in regard to education?
That's a great point. I know that our public relations team has done an outstanding job in communicating. We certainly could ask our building leadership to make those connections. One of the things you heard Mr. Duguid say is that during the time that when students do come back, they're going to have an adult that's going to be a touch point on a daily basis, just to ensure what are your needs, are you able to get through the material, do you have food in your house? Are mom and dad home, or are you there by yourself? You know, just those safety questions, and also making sure that we are good servants to help our kids, to make sure that they're successful during this time.
That's great. And then just another kind of point on that piece, more from an educator standpoint, is will we be working, and this is from a communication standpoint as well, but I know it's hard when we are going through these big challenges to make sure that we're communicating with parents, both personally as teachers, but also consistently across. So will our teams work together to ensure that we're providing messages to teachers that they can resend, to their communities, so that, there's personal touch, but the same information, so they're not feeling, bombarded by questions like, we heard this from this one, but not from this one. So just wondering about that.
Well, that's a great point. I'm sure that our public relations team is on that already. One thing we can do from a curriculum standpoint is making sure that all of our teachers know what, where they should be, what should be happening, whether they're on a digital platform or we're providing a paper pencil. And then you're absolutely right. Consistent communication, that's the same at Coyote Hills as it would be at Country Meadows. So we'll definitely take that into consideration.
Great. And then just one more thing, and I know this is a big question, and I know that, our districts across the state are collaborating on this issue because it's a concern, but on the assessment piece, I am hearing from parents that are concerned around state assessment. If you could just kind of touch base on where we're at with that.
At this time, we have not heard what a decision's been made yet.
Okay.
I think it all depends on how long the school closure lasts. I know I heard from somebody in another state that they're pushing out their state test regardless of being closed, and the kids are going to be taking it online. So with it being such fluidity with this whole process right now, I don't think I feel comfortable to answer whether we're giving a state assessment or not. I'm sure that messaging will be coming in the near future.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill. Ms. Stone?
I don't think I have any other questions, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So, quick question for you around our McKinney-Vento students, our homeless students. Really, and this is, it's going to take somewhat of a multifaceted question, especially those who might live out of our district, right, and attend our schools. How, from even a resource perspective, Mr. Gay, and providing these individuals for those tools to be successful in however we're going to be moving forward from a student success perspective. Can you talk about those discussions around meeting the needs of our homeless students?
President Sandoval, one of the things that's the reason why we started to pull actual documents that are on, rather than just assuming that everybody would have a digital tool. You're absolutely right. Some of our students that may be living with other family members or what have you may not have access to a computer. So Mr. Gay and his team have been looking at ways in which to do that, just like food services have been looking at ways in which to feed our kids. We certainly would want to make sure that our kids have the access to being educated and getting the same materials and same learning that their peers would. So we will certainly be looking at all possibilities of ways to make sure that we meet those needs.
Perfect, thank you.
President Sandoval, just
Yes.
as a follow-up as well, we do have a McKinney-Vento coordinator who, when we come back, will be, and I'm sure, knowing him, he's already working to support those students.
Perfect, thank you for that. Next question, I'm just going to kind of paint a picture. In the case that they're, let's say there aren't concessions in and around the required days or hours, right, due to what we're going through. And we have seniors, or a senior that's maybe moving cities or even states, upon graduation. How would we, I guess, address those individuals in the case that we have to extend our year, right? Really, I guess that's really the question.
President Sandoval, one thing that comes to mind very quickly would be allowing that student the opportunity to stay on Edgenuity and continue to finish out the course online. We do that already with a lot of our students that may be credit deficient or don't finish a course or have to take summer school, so that's one idea. I mean, we would certainly want to stay in communication with that student to ensure that they didn't have any problems as they moved states and maybe went to college out of state. So we'll work with that, and we'll probably be receiving some guidance from both NCAA as well as ABOR, because those are the two governing officials or entities that help to support transcripts and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. And it may make sense, Ms. Airy, from a communication regard. I don't know if we have a lot of those scenarios, but there may be some. And I would imagine timely communication from the parent to understand if this is the case would help us, help them, be successful through that transition.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
President Sandoval?
Yep.
I just wanted to add to that because you made me think about attendance policy. We're not there yet, but in our critical students that are seniors getting ready to graduate, I think about our current student attendance policy if they have to miss. Some of our students may have households where their loved ones could be in a health situation and they don't want to send them to school because of the germs or whatever the situation is. I would like us to prepare a plan that if that were the case and the student has to stay home, then we're not going to put them in a situation where they're missing school, that we have staff that will support them even though they can't come to school as a result of their family care needs. Something to consider for our seniors that are put in that situation too.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you for that. Any other comments? Good. Thank you.
President Sandoval, just quickly, if I may. First of all, the entire team, that finishes up our 4 perspectives in our presentation. Our entire team has done an absolutely amazing job. They have worked tirelessly to try to address many of these. We know there are going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of individual situations and scenarios that we're going to have to deal with, and we will do so each and every one. It's also important to know that with all of the moving parts, we are still waiting for some guidance as to how to move forward. And so a lot of that will come from direction from the state as to length of school year, graduating seniors, all of those kinds of things. So we're going to be in constant communication. We're going to be working through each of those scenarios, but we're doing our best to prepare for everything, which our team has done an exceptional job preparing. So we appreciate them very, very much in the work and coming in on the Monday of their spring break and the Tuesday of their spring break and maybe the Wednesday of their spring break. We don't know. And the Saturdays, and right, yeah. So again, I just wanted to highlight that. And I did want to draw our attention back to our resolution. We left that item without taking action.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I wasn't sure if it was coupled into 3.1, but no, thank you for that. Again, I think, as, we are confronted with a, somewhat of a unrest or situation of unrest and adversity without question, and something that is very much, uncharted, by all the districts here within our state. I do feel that, while the state, has made the decision to close our schools through the 27th, I think there is some level of localization that, we need to obviously be open to allowing the district to make those decisions as well. So that said, I would need a motion to approve the Peoria Unified School District Number 11 of Maricopa County, Arizona resolution.
I move that we approve the Peoria Unified School District Number 11 resolution.
Second. We have a motion by Ms. Underhill and a second by myself. Please cast your votes. You know what? Yeah, if we could.
I can add a comment.
Sure.
Though this does not highlight it, I appreciate you signing the statements that our fellow peers have drafted in another district, the Peoria Unified School Districts is represented. Do we have a moment to highlight that, or as it relates to advocating, part of our role as leaders is to advocate for our students' well-being and making sure that they have all that they need, and a lot of it starts at the top with those state statutes. So I appreciate you signing, Superintendent Pallas Thompson, on behalf of Peoria Unified, representing advocacy, especially in this situation.
As we're waiting for Mrs. Doan to return, because I think it's an important vote to have. Maslow in 1943 did his hierarchy of needs, and what do our people need in order to be able to move. And while there's been questions about whether that's actual, it takes me back to, I wasn't alive in 43, mind you, but there was a time of great angst in our country also, as we were, in and out of wars, and there were all kinds of things happening. This is a biological war. That was a physical war. And the needs are specifically, the needs we're kind of addressing. The physiological needs, our kids need to eat, they need to have shelter, they need to, and our families, they need to be healthy. All of those needs are number one. Then we move to safety, okay? That's safety and well-being, whether it be emotional or otherwise. How do we make sure that our kids are safe? The next piece has to do with love and belonging. Know that we're cared for. When we talk about our teachers coming in and saying, I'm just checking on you today. How you doing? What's happening? Do you guys need anything? What do you do? I think that will really set us up for the relationship that maybe sometimes we forget about. The next thing, though, that comes into self-esteem and self-actualization. We need those three things in place right now. And I think those are the ones that we've addressed at the moment. And those are the things I'm concerned about. So that'll get us through, certainly, it got us through in 43. I think it can get us through in 2020.
Thank you for that. And I'll concur with Ms. Saya Martinez's comments. I think as we move forward, collaborating, with the other districts to, have this very common message to the states, if indeed the decision is, to, close our schools for the remainder of this year, ensuring that the state, provides those resources that they are through the 27th, those continue through that time frame as well, is mission critical. So thank you for collaborating with other districts. We are certainly stronger together without question. Ms. Stone, we have a motion to approve 3.1 by Ms. Underhill and a second by myself. We wanted to wait for you prior to us going through it. Do you need to see the?
Can we do a voice vote?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you.
I apologize. I have one question I wanted to ask, and it was, Mr. Duguid, it was in your presentation. I had a question from parents about medications that are at the school sites. And are they able to, at some point, get those extra medications in the event that they were to run out?
President Sandoval, Mrs. Underhill, yes. I've asked Mrs. Alexander, Mrs. Alexander to reach out to our nurses to open up the schools on the 23rd and 24th of next week to give those medications out.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for that. Moving along to 3.2, delegation of authority to the superintendent and/or deputy superintendent to close and open schools through the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year. Any discussion, questions on 3.2, board? Ms. Aya?
I believe this we've already identified. In lieu of past experiences in this district, we learned to have a primary, a secondary, and I want to believe that we have a tertiary in place. Is that correct? Okay. And the situation we've already discussed. Thank you.
Ms. Pingerelli? Underhill? Ms. Doan? Okay. That said, I need a motion to approve 3.2, delegation of authority to the superintendent and/or deputy superintendent to close and open schools through the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year.
I move to recommend 3.2 as presented.
Second? We have a motion by Ms. Sayal Martinez, a second by myself. Please cast your votes.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to 4.1, I need a motion to adjourn. We adjourn?
Second?
A motion by myself, second by Ms. Sayal Martinez to adjourn.
Aye.
Please cast your votes. We have an aye for Ms. Doan. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.